The car had barely turned the corner when I realized it. My passport wasn't in my bag. I double-checked everything the night before, but somehow, in the shuffle of curling irons and travel socks, I'd left the one thing I couldn't board without. "Turn around, please," I told the driver. He sighed, but nodded, flipping a U at the next intersection. The cruise ticket was tucked neatly in my wallet, along with my insurance and itinerary. But the little navy booklet, it had to be in my desk drawer, where I always kept it. My fingers drummed against my knee the entire ride back. Not from nerves. Just excitement. It was the first real trip I'd planned since Cal died. I didn't want to miss a second. We pulled into the driveway, and I waved off the driver, telling him I'd be just 5 minutes. The house looked the same as always. Cedar siding, navy shutters, and the garden beds I'd kept pristine since 1982. I went around the side gate, not wanting to startle Alma or Griffin if they were still inside. They came by every Sunday. As I stepped onto the back porch, I heard voices. I paused. "She's still too sharp," Alma Griffin said. "We have to move soon. She could last another 10, 15 years if we don't act now." A silence stretched. Then Alma's voice, soft but tight. "It's not like I want to rush anything, but I'm tired of waiting for a future that keeps getting farther away." I stood frozen beside the bedroom window. The lace curtain fluttered just enough for me to peer through without being seen. They were sitting on the patio, sipping coffee like it was any other Sunday. "What if she changes her will?" Griffin said. "Or worse, starts giving things away? All that money, that house, wasted on some late-life fantasy." My heart pounded so hard I thought the glass might rattle. Alma's reply was lower, but I caught it. "She's planning a trip alone." "That's erratic, right?" Griffin leaned forward. "That's our angle. We talked to Dr. Carmichael. Start building the case." I stepped back from the window, breath caught in my throat. I had come home for a passport. Instead, I found the edge of a knife pressed against the life I thought was safe. I didn't go inside right away. I just stood there listening. I stayed behind the curtain, not moving, barely breathing. "She's got routines." "Sure," Griffin said, his voice steady, almost clinical. "But that's part of the problem. Rigid thinking. Fixed habits. That can be early cognitive rigidity." Alma didn't respond right away. I heard the faint clink of her spoon against her coffee mug. "I don't know, Griff," she murmured. "It feels wrong." "It's not wrong," he snapped. "It's planning. It's protecting what should be ours. You've lived in her shadow your whole life. She's just delaying the inevitable." I pressed my hand against the windowsill to steady myself. "My shadow. I gave her everything. If she forgets to pay one bill," he continued, "we note it. If she tells a story twice, we log it. We build a case. Subtle. Believable." "You want me to bait her into forgetting?" Alma asked. "No," he said. "Just observe. Help the narrative. Maybe move a few things, her pills, her glasses, see if she gets confused." The silence that followed was worse than anything they'd said so far. "And the house?" Alma asked, her voice dropping. "We'll make the case that it's too big, too risky, unsafe for someone her age. Once we're guardians, it'll be our call." They were talking about me like I wasn't a person anymore, like I was already gone. "She's not senile, Griffin," Alma said. "She's just grieving. She's still sharp. That's why we move fast," he said. "Before she starts making decisions that cut us out. She's your mother, and you're her daughter. Which means if you don't do this, someone else will. At least with us. She stays in the family." Alma didn't speak again. Griffin rose, and I watched his shadow stretch toward the garden gate. "Think about it," he said. But not for long. I stayed frozen in place until I heard the front door close behind them. I couldn't cry. Not yet. I couldn't move either. I wasn't ready for grief. Not this kind. Eventually, I found my passport in the desk drawer, exactly where I'd left it. I held it in my hands, the weight of it anchoring me to the ground. I stood in that room for a long time, rehearsing what I'd say. But nothing came. No confrontation. No demand. Only one thought settled. Clear and sharp. I had to let them believe I didn't know. I walked slowly through the hallway, fingers grazing the edges of picture frames that hadn't moved in decades. Alma in her cap and gown. Cal in his tool belt, arms folded, with that grin that meant he just finished something by hand and wouldn't say a word about it unless asked. We built this house together, Cal and I. Every inch of it told a story. He laid the floors himself, plank by plank, after long shifts at the mill. I painted the kitchen walls 3 different times before settling on the soft yellow that reminded me of morning sun. Alma's nursery had once been the guest room. We'd cleared out everything the week we found out, filled it with books and stuffed animals and shelves that Cal swore would still be standing when she had kids of her own. And now? Now they were calling it a liability. Too big. Too risky. A thing to be sold. I looked at the scuff mark on the stair where Alma used to race her dolls down in a shoebox. The corner of the hallway where she taped up her first keep out sign when she was 10. The cupboard where she used to sneak sugar cubes when she thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't just a house. It was her childhood. My marriage. Our lives, stacked like bricks and memories. And now she was plotting to take it. I pressed my hand to the doorframe of the den, the one Cal carved our initials into the week we finished it. I traced it so many times, I could do it blind. I stepped back, straightened the photo of Alma holding her first paycheck, and walked to the kitchen. They wanted to erase me, but they'd underestimated what I remembered. I left for the cruise 2 days later, passport and small suitcase packed exactly as planned. My voice was steady when I told Alma at the front door, "Don't forget to water the begonas." She smiled and promised she wouldn't, her eyes bright, like they always were when she thought she was in control. The night before, I installed 2 cameras, one behind the bookshelf in the den, another tucked behind the curtain rod in my bedroom. I labeled a few envelopes, updated a list of valuables, and placed a small recording device in the drawer where I kept my bank statements. If they were going to test me, I needed to see how far they'd go. At the port, while other passengers clutched hats and suntan lotion, I sat on a bench with my phone and dialed the only person Cal ever trusted with paperwork, Julian Cortez. "I need advice," I said. Quiet advice. Julian didn't ask questions. Just said, "When you're back, come in. I'll be ready." That same day, I reached out to a private investigator, Dana Fields, a former officer, now retired, quiet, known in town for being the kind of person who knew how to listen. We talked briefly on the phone. She didn't flinch when I said I suspected family. "It happens more than people admit," she said. "But you're doing the right thing, Miss Delaney." I didn't tell her yet what I'd heard. That part stayed with me, folded somewhere between my skin and my spine. On the cruise, I walked the decks, took photos of sunsets, and smiled at strangers during dinner. I laughed once at a joke someone told, then excused myself early to sit alone on the balcony. They thought they'd scared me into silence. But I was watching now. I was listening. And when I returned, it would be their turn not to know what I already did. The message from Dana came 3 days after I disembarked. Simple. "I found something. We need to meet." She arrived at my house with a folder so thin it didn't look like much. But what it held changed everything. Griffin had another address, in Silverton, an apartment in a modest complex, listed under a woman named Letty Harmon. He visited twice a week, always after 6. Sometimes he stayed the night. Sometimes he brought groceries. There were pictures, him unlocking her door, him carrying a toddler on his hip, him holding a little girl's backpack. The boy had his eyes. Dana laid them out slowly, one by one, on the kitchen table. I couldn't speak. I just stared. "He's been seeing her for at least 2 years, Dana said. The kids call him Dad." I reached for the back of a chair, steadying myself. "Does Alma know?" Dana shook her head. "From what I can tell, she's in the dark. Everything's still in her name. He's using her to get to you, but he's building something else on the side." I sat down, hands folded tight in my lap. The betrayal stung worse now. Griffin hadn't just fooled me. He'd fooled Alma, too. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But more than anything, I wanted to stay quiet long enough to see what else would rise to the surface. He thought we were all pawns. And he had no idea that 2 of them were about to turn the board over. When I stepped through the front door, Alma was already in the kitchen, unpacking a grocery bag like she belonged there. She turned with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome back, Mom. How was the cruise?" I smiled right back. "Lovely. Warm weather, good food, quiet, just what I needed." She hugged me too tightly, like she was measuring something. I patted her back and stepped away before it felt unnatural. I spent the rest of the afternoon making it look like I was settling in: laundry, emails, watering plants. But I was watching everything. The drawers in my bedroom had been closed, but not the way I leave them. The bank folder in the desk had a slight bend in the corner it hadn't had before. My grandmother's brooch was gone from the velvet tray in my jewelry box. And in the hall closet, the box labeled "Donations" had been moved forward, probably to hide the fact that someone had photographed the document stacked behind it. That night, I reviewed the footage from the den camera. I watched Griffin leaf through my files with latex gloves. Alma's voice off-screen low, tense. "Hurry up. I don't want our neighbors seeing you through the window." The bedroom camera caught Alma alone later, standing at the foot of my bed, just staring. Then she picked up the framed picture of Cal and me on our wedding day and studied it like she didn't know who we were. I kept a notebook in the kitchen drawer now, listing every object moved, every phrase I overheard, every shift in Alma's tone. I cooked dinner the next evening like always. They came like always, sat in the same chairs, said the same things. But this time I didn't flinch. I poured their wine with a smile and let them think I was still the same woman they could manage. They didn't realize the camera in the fruit bowl was recording every word. I asked Alma to come by mid-morning, just the two of us. I made sure the table was clean, the good mugs were out, and the camera above the cabinet was rolling. She arrived on time, hair done, blouse buttoned too high. She looked nervous, though she tried to hide it. "I thought it'd be nice to have some time together," I said as I poured the coffee. "No Griffin today?" "He had a call," she said quickly. "Work stuff." We sat. She added sugar she didn't use before. I stirred mine slowly. "I've been thinking," I said, keeping my voice soft. "There have been some odd moments lately, like that day I forgot my keys." Alma straightened. "Yes. You've seemed a little off. I mean, not in a bad way. Just distracted." "Distracted," I repeated, nodding. "And the week before, I called the plumber twice about the same leak. You remember that?" She nodded too fast. "Exactly. And repeating stories sometimes. I mean, we all do it, but it's noticeable now." "Noticeable," I echoed, letting the words settle. She sipped her coffee. Her eyes avoided mine. "I appreciate you being honest," I said, leaning in slightly. "Actually, I've been meaning to ask, why did Dr. Carmichael call me last week, asking about memory tests?" Her mug paused midair. He was just checking in," she said. "I mentioned some concerns. Nothing serious." "I see," I said. "And did Griffin also express those concerns, or just you?" Her throat moved as she swallowed. "We both care. That's all." I smiled. "Of course. And when you moved the pillbox last Sunday, that was out of concern, too?" Her eyes widened. "What?" "It's all right," I said gently. "I'm just curious. I found it under the sink, along with my reading glasses and the spare keys you didn't ask to borrow." She pushed her chair back slightly, color draining from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No," I said calmly. "I imagine you don't." She stood, flustered, muttering something about forgetting an errand. I didn't stop her. I let her go. And when the door shut behind her, I opened the drawer, took out the notebook, and wrote down the exact time her mask cracked. It was just after 6 when Griffin showed up unannounced. I saw him through the window, checking his reflection in the glass before knocking, like he hadn't already crossed 1,000 lines. "Evening, Maris," he said with that smooth, empty charm. "Thought I'd drop off a few things Alma left behind." I let him in. "You have a minute?" "Of course," he said, setting the small bag on the table. I motioned for him to sit. I had already placed the folder there, neatly closed, waiting. "What's this?" he asked, eyebrows lifted. "I've been organizing things, I said, sliding the folder toward him. Old files, photos, some recent documents. He opened it. The first page was a still shot of him outside Letty Harmon's apartment. The next, him holding her child. The third, a screenshot of a deposit from Alma's account into one marked under a different name. He flipped faster, hands tightening as he read through printed emails, job application rejections, and a copy of a PI's report confirming he hadn't worked at Wexler Consulting in over a year. When he finally looked up, the pretense was gone. "You've been spying on me." "I've been protecting myself," I said. "You're not as clever as you think, Griffin." Before he could speak again, the front door opened. Alma stepped in, holding grocery bags, keys still in the lock. She stopped cold when she saw the folder and the look on Griffin's face. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. I stood and handed her the folder. She read faster than he had. Her lips parted. A flush spread up her neck. "You lied," she said to him, voice trembling. "You lied to me." "It's not what it looks like," Griffin said, trying to gather himself. "It's exactly what it looks like." I cut in. "You've been using both of us. But I learned how to read men like you a long time ago." He stared at me, all pretense finally drained from his face. Alma took a step back from him, like something foul had passed between them. She turned to me slowly. "What do we do now?" I looked her in the eyes, steady and calm. "Now," I said, "we do this my way." I called Julian first. He didn't ask for details, just said, "We're ready." Within the hour, Dana arrived, followed by 2 officers in plain clothes. Griffin didn't protest at first. He stood quietly while they explained the charges: fraud, attempted elder abuse, forgery. But as they cuffed him, the charm cracked. "You think this will stick?" he sneered. "You think a judge will take her word?" Dana stepped forward, calm as ever. "We have recordings, financials, eyewitness statements, and a second family willing to testify. You might want to save your breath for your lawyer." They walked him out as Alma stood frozen near the door, hand braced on the wall. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know about her."
About the job.
About any of it. I believed her. But that didn't erase what she had known, what she had done. "You didn't want to know," I said gently. "But now you do." She looked at me, then really looked, and I saw the guilt settle in her shoulders like a weight she wasn't ready to carry.
"I was scared," she said.
"Of losing everything. Of failing." "You lost more by trying to control what wasn't yours," I replied. "But that doesn't mean you can't rebuild." She nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. I left her there in the hallway and walked into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, hands that didn't shake.
I had made my choice the moment I found my passport that day.
I wasn't going to let anyone write my ending for me. The house is quiet again, but it no longer feels vulnerable. I met with Julian the following week and rewrote everything: my will, the deed, the power of attorney. No one would ever have that kind of access again. We established a small foundation in Cal's name, using part of my savings. It offers legal aid to older adults navigating coercion, manipulation, and quiet betrayals within their own families. He would have liked that. He always believed in tools that lasted. Alma signed over the financial rights Griffin had pressured her into claiming. She moved into a modest apartment across town. No more polished homes. No illusion of control. Just a job at the public clinic and enough space to start over. We speak now, sometimes carefully, gently, like 2 people walking across a cracked bridge. They're trying to repair plank by plank. I still find myself checking drawers, locking the back door twice, noting where I leave things. But it's not fear anymore. It's awareness. My garden bloomed early this year. I pruned the hydrangeas myself, gloves on, knees dirty, sleeves rolled. For the first time in months, I didn't think about what had been taken from me. I thought about what was still mine. This house. These walls. This life. They tried to turn it into a prison of fading memory. I turned it back into a place where I decide who I am. I sit on the porch in the early evening, a cup of tea warm in my hands. The porch light already glowing, even though the sun hasn't fully set. I leave it on now, not out of fear, but as a quiet invitation for those who come in honesty, with open hands and no masks. Donna stops by sometimes, bringing fresh tomatoes from her garden. Julian visits once a month with new updates on the foundation's work. We've helped 3 families this year already. And that's just the beginning. At the library, I lead a small workshop for women learning how to manage their finances later in life. Some are widows. Some are just tired of being overlooked. I teach them how to spot signatures that don't match and how to ask questions that make people squirm. I've booked another trip for the spring, this time to the coast alone again. But not the same woman who left with doubt in her throat. Now I know what I carry.
The house stays mine. The story stays mine.
And the light stays on. Not for who I was, but for who I finally chose to become. If this story moved you, if you've ever been threatened by your own family, hit like, subscribe, and share. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to protect your home from your children? Where are you watching from? Thank you for listening. And remember, age doesn't erase your power. It refines it.